The first thing that I was done to me was I was thrown out of the investment banking office.
You must be meeting politicians, lawmakers, policymakers.
I had the honor of being called, and there was an interesting meeting at the PMO.
Why one should look at India's alternative investment space?
India is, viewed as one of the top markets from a performance point of view.
What's your big, bold prediction over the next 5, 10 years? Hello, everyone. This is Jitendra Gohil. I'm the Chief Investment Strategist at Kotak Alt. I'm very excited to welcome S. Srinivasan. We call him Srini. Srini has had almost 20 years with Kotak Alt and total 30 years of experience. In his journey at Kotak Alt, he has been able to raise almost $8.8 billion worth of assets. And he's the pioneer in Kotak Alt, as we call him. So, Shrini, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
Shrini, what we have seen in the past 20 years is like a great journey that Kotak Alt has gone through. Can you throw some light how we started this whole journey right from 2004 onwards and today as we sit, how the journey has been? What was your experience so far?
When we started, we did not know that alternative assets is actually called alternative assets. I think the colloquial term in those days was private equity, and we didn't even have regulations. It used to be called venture capital fund regulations. I had completed nearly 14 years of investment banking career, and I was bored of that. And I, said, look, I don't want to do this anymore. So I was thrown a bone by the management and said, why don't you start a real estate fund? Because government is just opening up foreign investment in real estate. So I had no idea what a real estate fund is. The first thing that I was done to me was I was thrown out of the investment banking office. I was given a small office in our original registered office in Nariman Bhavan, less than 1,000 square feet. And thereafter, it was a journey of interesting discovery. You do everything right from writing your first PPM to negotiating with the lawyers to meeting investors. But that was the start. It was a fun journey to go and discover something new.
I think that time the landscape also was very exciting, right? From 2002 to 2007, that period when we saw asset prices actually
Yeah,
skyrocketed. And I think in 2004 we had a political change. I think
yeah.
government was changed. BJP lost the election, market crashed. But then we saw another round of real estate bubble, and then it got burst. But so from alt perspective, how you survived those volatility? Because after that we saw this 2008 crisis, and recently, if you see COVID, how you managed this whole macro headwinds? Because it's a liquid asset class, you must be facing like a lot of challenges.
Oh, we've had our share of challenges. When we raised the first fund back in 2004, 2005, we did have Life Insurance Corporation as one of the institutional investors, but the rest of the money was raised from private clients and HNIs. And just prior to the global financial crisis that you mentioned, we had also raised an international fund, and we started investing. And then all the foreign investors started coming into the country. Real estate prices went through the roof.
Yeah.
If you look at that era, every major name in the world, whether it's Goldman, Lehman, Walton, everybody was in Tishman Speyer, everybody was investing, and investing at prices that we could not understand. But we were a newbie, so somewhere we also got carried away, and we invested 20% of that fund prior to February 2007. And then by 2007, we said, look, I don't think we can invest because we don't understand what's really going on in the market, because the market was so frothy. And that, I think, was the right decision. September 2008, financial crisis happened. So when we look back and we looked at what we had done, we had invested nearly 20% of the fund. We had 80% uninvested capital, and investors just disappeared from the market. There is complete, शोले में कहते हैं ना, बड़ा सन्नाटा छाया हुआ था.
Wow.
And so we were going around saying, इतना सन्नाटा क्यों है, कोई पैसा वाला है ही नहीं. But I think what really saved us, I would say, is that we kept, with all of this capital flowing out of the country, the government also started tweaking rules and regulations. And one interesting thing that happened at that time was that for the first time, the central bank permitted foreign investors to invest in debt securities. Originally, it was permitted only to invest in government securities. Later, they added maximum of $2 billion for private corporate debt. We spotted that opportunity and we felt, why can't we structure our foreign fund to invest in corporate bond of real estate companies so that we can essentially provide the much needed capital, but also generate very high returns because they were not getting capital from anywhere else. All the investments that we did after the financial crisis generated more than 19% return. But the 20% that we invested prior to that,
That much.
single digit return. So there were lots of lessons learned. So we used to have a deck, I still remember. The first page of the deck was lessons learned in investing. And we used to put all the things that we did wrong and that we will not do in future. And that lessons learned page is still part of our internal training manual for every employee who joins us.
She now India is almost 4 trillion economy. We are going to touch 4 trillion in the next few months or so. And if I look at over the next 5 7 years, probably will be 7 trillion economy. Obviously, this country is growing leaps and bounds. But there are several investors who are sitting on the fence, looking at the valuations, right? So equity valuation is near to all-time high levels. Even if I look at the US debt level is skyrocketing, so there are a lot of nervousness around that. So, what would you say that looking at India's growth story or near-term issues, how would you address this dilemma, or what top three, four things that you will tell these investors why one should look at India's alternative investment space?
Yeah, first of all, since you said alternative investments, in most alternative investors, whether it's what we in our language call LPs, institutional investors globally, have to take a 5 7 year view because the strategies that one actually executes are not easily liquid. So versus public markets, which have other drivers in terms of mark to market reality and so on and so forth. So for an alternative investor, be that a manager or a global LP committing capital, they need to take that strategic call with regard to investing into India in the first place. And secondly, the macro factors that impact their decision of portfolio allocation. I do remember that when I used to go and talk to investors globally, there was a point in time back in 2007, 8, 10. China was not yet a country allocation decision for a lot of global investors. I think somewhere in the 2014-15 vintage that happened. It was a turning point. A lot of investors went in with a massive amount of money into China. Because the economy had become large enough and was therefore relevant from an asset allocation point of view for global investors. I think we are probably getting there. We are not too far away from that. Because even today, when for various alternative strategies, whether it's, let's say, VC or buyout or private equity or real estate, India tends to get clubbed into a sort of an Asia strategy. Never mind that most of those fund managers will be investing 70 80% in India. Uh, and therefore, for homegrown managers like us, to cut the clutter and get the capital uh, and compete against the best in the world who also are raising capital from the same sources for an India specific strategy is something that is always a challenge. But the fact that today India is viewed as one of the top markets from a performance point of view after the United States uh, gives me the belief and confidence that we are just around the cusp of that delivery of India being an asset class by itself. What that means is a very significant amount of global capital allocation that will come into various strategies. Fundamentally, India would still be viewed as a growth market. Investors will come into India for growth. Um, the other asset class where I think investors are have already started coming in are where the rest of the world, as you know, is getting older. So there's more pension capital available. So these two themes, growth and annuity assets, are going to attract investors both globally and domestically. For the domestic investors, I think if you look at what's happened in the market, is that the domestic investors have lost out on the venture capital boom. Uh,
Yeah.
they are now seeing the fruits of the investments that happened 7 or 8 years ago with some of the more marquee listings in the technology space. But that's also given them the confidence to start, you know, experimenting with new ideas, committing capital to new ideas. A case in point is that we're raising, as you know, a life sciences fund, early stage life sciences fund, which we think India will be one of the center stage players in the next generation of life sciences. And that's the bet that we are taking.
Can you elaborate more on that? It's pretty interesting space to be in, right?
It's been an area where we have always had a very consistent record in the past. My other colleagues who have
Yes,
superannuated
that's
used to be very good
yes.
investors in life sciences. So we've been investing in that for nearly 20 years. But what we are seeing now is life sciences 2.0 in India, led by innovation, led by entrepreneurship, led by a combination of technology and the new evolution of technology and new drug discovery. So, some of these companies that when we made up our decision, we didn't think about it yesterday. We made this decision nearly 3 years ago. That's when we said we should first put money where our mouth is. And we started investing from our own balance sheet. And we have a portfolio of 18 companies which are top notch, innovative, interesting life sciences companies. On the back of the success of those companies, we are raising this fund. And that's a thrust area. We will continue to be a big investor in life sciences.
And is it also safe to say that this fund is going to be little bit more immune, or you would say not so much impacted with respect to the current macros?
It won't be. See, it's like this. I know that in public markets, people always say FMCG. FMCG.
Mm,
लोग तो खाना खाएंगे ही,
mm,
कोका कोला पियेंगे ही, and therefore there will be permanent growth, etc.
mm.
But लोगों को पहले जीना भी होता है और लोग बीमार भी पड़ते हैं. So, if you have to take care of your health, uh, that's going to be the fundamental thing, and India has to find its place. And the world's greatest doctors are Indians wherever they are, right? So the talent is already there, the technology talent is already there. And if India became the go-to place for technology talent about 20-25 years ago, we envision that India could potentially be one of the hubs
Yeah.
on life sciences, and the combination of life sciences and technology, because that combination is tailor made for India.
So, Srini, we are almost $9 billion worth of assets under our belt, and you must be meeting politicians, lawmakers, policymakers. So, what contribution you think Kotak Alt has made to the industry? It's an evolving industry; it is growing very fast. As an industry leader, as a pioneer in the industry, what contribution Kotak Alt has made?
I would say, first of all of what we just achieved have been able to do is thanks to a fantastic team of people that I've had. Many of us in the team have been around for, 20 years plus. Each of those teams, because of their culture, the consistency, and the integrity with which they operate, uh, is the reason why each of those strategies, whether it is real estate, private credit, infrastructure, etc., have been successful, have been generating consistent track record. So I would say, if to answer your question, what's our biggest contribution? Uh, we've had a number of mid-level exits of people,
Hmm.
and I can say that many of whom have gone on to leadership positions in actually in
Yes.
some of the
Yes.
LPs.
Yeah.
And so I would say that I've contributed trained talent to the market. Uh,
We need it.
uh,
Yeah.
and I think the second thing is that because we focused at a point in time immediately after global financial crisis to raise capital from global institutional investors, and we've raised more, nearly $8 billion from global institutional investors. It is a somewhat unnoticed fact that we have enabled so much of foreign direct investment into the country,
Mm.
which is a very significant number in my view. Probably as a financial services company, we're one of the largest in terms of getting foreign direct investment into the country, as nearly $8 billion. I think the last part I would say is that our consistent engagement with industry and policymakers through various interventions, including, for example, today, I am the vice chairman of the IVCA, and the government engages with us uh, to shape policy going forward. But the one interesting, I would say, anecdote that I really cherish was a couple of years ago when the Prime Minister decided to call a handful of fund managers, and I had the honor of being called, and there was an interesting meeting at the PMO. He was very keen to understand what is it that we can do to enable India into the next step. And the patience with which he listened to each one of us, and he was so quick and in absorbing what we were saying. There were about 14, 15 of us in the room, some other aides as well, but he listened to every one of us patiently. Each one of us spoke for a few minutes. And then when he wanted to give his comments and remarks, the interesting thing was that he was able to individually make eye contact with different people and take their name and said, "You so and so said this and so and so said that." That was a phenomenal thing to do.
Wow. So you mentioned that earlier, a part of your answer mentioned that you actually train employees. I think this is where we need to contribute towards the growth of the asset class, right? We need more talent in India. What Kotak Alt is doing differently to nurture this talent, to bring about the best in people that we hire, and how you have achieved this fantastic journey of $9 billion, obviously with the help of this bright talent. And what is different with Kotak Alt's approach towards employees?
One of the things that I learned when I was a banker and we had our investment banking joint venture with Goldman was teamwork. In those days, when emails were not there, Goldman had a system where everybody had a voicemail box, right? And you are supposed to dial into that voicemail box to listen to any updates or voicemails that you will get. So it's like sending an email today, but it used to be a voicemail. It used to be a religion to call into that voicemail box, which meant that if there is a particular assignment and there is a team, the team is already there and there's a voicemail box for the team. You go meet a client anywhere in the world, right? And immediately thereafter you leave an update voicemail. So everybody in the team knew at any point in time 24 by 7 what was going on, and being global customers, etc. It was a fantastic thing that I learned. So when I had the opportunity to build an alternative asset business, I put a lot of that learning to work. Even today, right from day one when I started the business with the real estate fund, every Monday morning, we have a full team meeting, including the junior most analyst sitting there, discussing what happened in the market, discussing what the pipeline looks like, discussing why we should be doing something and why we should not be doing something, discussing the challenges that we are facing in the portfolio. So the nothing is hidden from even the junior most employees, and that's the steepest learning curve for a young professional who joins any organization.
Correct. So, Srini, lastly, what's your big, bold prediction over the next 5, 10 years? You're almost 60 now.
Yep.
You have also touched upon the industry and how it is evolving. I would like to conclude with a vision. Like, what do you think Kotak Alt's vision statement should be? Or in the next 20 years, if I have to look Kotak Alt, where you want to take this team forward, and how do you see next 10, 20 years will pan out for Kotak Alt?
First of all, on 60, let me add, most if you go through the Rolodex of the big alternative fund managers or alternative business owners, they're all well into their 70s and 80s and very much active. So
Yes,
I still have the heart of a 20-year-old. I'm still excited about the
I can
opportunity in
vouch for
India.
that.
You know, when I started, we didn't think of it as an alternate assets. But as time passed and we understood the business models, I think our inspiration has been some of the global players who have built a very large global business on multiple asset classes. People like a Blackstone, a KKR, or an Apollo. Um, and they have pretty much most same verticals that we have, or rather, we have pretty much the same verticals that they have, which is private credit, real estate, private equity, infrastructure. we think that we have the opportunity to build something out of India um, on the similar lines of some of these global players. So the idea is that India becomes one of the larger economies, as the surpluses of India actually become available over the coming decades, we should emerge as one of the global players. Obviously, you know, I guess the path will traverse through Asia,
Mm.
but be the largest alternative asset manager in India. And if we are able to build a firm like any of these global peers for India, that to my mind would be an achievement of something that I would be very happy to walk away on the sunset for.
That's great. Good luck. So, thank you, Shrini.
Thank you.
Stay tuned for more such interesting conversations on alternative investment space.